Hey guys, and welcome back to another Mystery Monday video on my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than my usual Mystery Monday videos because today's video is actually about two completely separate cases. Now, both of these cases were requested, and one of them does have a lot of more information than the other one, but because they do have a little bit of similarities in the case, and because there wasn't enough information for me to make a full-fledged video about both of them, I thought that I would combine them both together to make a longer video for you guys. But once again, these cases are not related at all, and I will very distinctively mention when I'm going on to the next case so that the information isn't kind of jumbled up. But with that all being said, let's get into the first case. Sharin Morningstar Keenan was born in 1973 to her two parents, Brendan and Linda Keenan. And she was born in Toronto and would remain living there for her whole entire life. Brendan and Linda Keenan were somewhat hippies, and their whole entire lives revolved pretty much around love. But the light of both of their eyes was their daughter Sharin. And to this couple, Morningstar actually symbolized love, and that is where Sharin actually got her name. And throughout Sharin's life, she radiated love all the time. She was really passionate about drama and art, and she loved being around people and really loved playing with her friends. On January 23rd, 1983, Sharin and her mother had actually spent the day visiting some friends. And on their way home, Sharin had asked her mother if she could stop and play at the park near their house. And the park that Sharin actually wanted to stay and play at was a small park called Jean Sibelius Square, which is a very small park in Toronto. And it is just in between Bathurst and Dupont Street. Because this park was so close to their home, Sharin had actually played at this park frequently. She was there all the time. And because child abduction and things of that sort just weren't heard of at this time, that wasn't really anybody's concern. So when leaving Sharin at the park, her mother just told her to be home by 4, giving Sharin exactly 1 hour to play at the park. And she had no doubt in her mind that her daughter would be home when she told her to be. But when 4 o'clock came and Sharin did not arrive home, this struck her parents as extremely odd because Sharin had a watch and she always kept track of time and was usually never late. But they weren't too concerned because they just thought that maybe she got caught up playing with some other kids at the park and just lost track of time. So Sharin's father headed out to go and retrieve his daughter and bring her home for dinner. When Sharin's father arrived at the park, again, Sharin was nowhere to be found. That is when he started questioning the other people that were at the park playing at the time, asking if they had seen his daughter. And that is when he was informed that Sharin was last seen talking to an unknown man. Police were called around 6:30 p.m. and because things like this just didn't happen, a search was conducted immediately. By 10 o'clock, missing persons broadcasts were going off on police radios every half an hour, and a sound truck was driving through the city announcing that a little girl was missing. By 12 p.m. Monday morning, 2 homicide detectives were assigned to this case, as well as 2 constables who were set up on Dupont Street, along with a bunch of recording devices that were set up all over the city trying to catch the kidnapper. On February 1st, 1983, without any significant movement in this case and nothing really happening to make investigators feel like they were getting any closer to finding Sharin, police decided to conduct a door-to-door search. And just 10 days after Sharin had vanished, police decided to do an intense investigation of 482 Brunswick Avenue, Toronto, which at the time was a rooming house. One of the investigators on this case who was investigating the home said that he decided to check the fridge. And when he had decided to check the fridge originally, he couldn't get it open. The door was extremely stuck. But when he did finally get it open, the light in the fridge didn't come on, and he could see a garbage bag inside of the fridge and a white collared shirt hanging out. And his first thought was who would put laundry into the fridge. He said that he was so traumatized by what he's seen, he couldn't really comprehend what he was looking at, and it actually took him a few minutes to realize what he was seeing. Inside this fridge was the remains of 9-year-old Sharin Morningstar Keenan. She had been severely sexually assaulted, strangled, stuffed into a garbage bag, and then stuffed into a fridge that was still running. Dennis Melvin Howe was the man who was renting this room and is now the man who is highly suspected of Sharin Morningstar Keenan's murder. The park where Sharin was last seen playing was actually only 100 yards from Dennis Howe's room that he rented inside of this rooming house. And there was DNA found all over Sharin that suggested that Dennis Howe was the murderer. This case is one that is considered by the Toronto police and investigators to be solved. But unfortunately, Dennis Howe actually left Toronto the day after Sharin vanished, and he has never been seen since, so he remains uncaught. Dennis Howe is known to use multiple aliases, but he always uses the same birthday, which is his actual real birthday, which is September 26th, 1940. He's left-handed and has 2 crooked pinkies and is known to be quite a dirty drifter with very bad teeth. He is also known to smoke player cigarettes and likes to line them up on the table and refers to everybody as turkey. This case is so brutal that the officer that actually found Sharin's body had to take a leave of absence from the force because he was so traumatized by what he found in that refrigerator. It is likely now that Dennis Howe is no longer alive, but this was one of the largest manhunts in Canadian history, and police would like to know about his whereabouts, whether he is alive or deceased. So if you have any information on exactly where to find him or about where he might be, there will be a number linked in the description box below. This case is absolutely horrific, and my heart sincerely goes out to Sharin's parents as well as any of her other loved ones out there. It is such a shame that she was taken by them, but it is so horrific that she was taken in such a brutal fashion. And I sincerely hope that Dennis Howe is out there somewhere and gets what he deserves. But that is the end of this case. On to the next case in this video. Now, once again, this case is not related to the first case at all. These are completely different cases. They just have some similarities, and they're both a little bit shorter than other cases that I would have covered on this channel, which is why I'm combining them into one video. Morgan Nick was born on September 12th, 1988 to her two parents, John and Colleen Nick. She was born and raised in an extremely small town called Ozark in Arkansas. Morgan was known to be an extremely sweet little girl and was described by everybody as having an extremely vibrant personality. And they said that even at this young age that she was, you could tell that she was going to do great things in her life. After having Morgan, her parents went on to have two more children, Logan Nick and Taryn Nick. And they were both extremely close to Morgan, but especially Logan because Taryn was still quite small. On June 9th, 1995, Colleen had a very special day planned for her and Morgan. She said in an interview that after having the other two children, she didn't feel like she got much quality time with Morgan, so she would take a day for just the two of them to spend one-on-one time together as much as she could. On this day in particular, Colleen dropped the two little ones off at their grandparents, and her and Morgan headed to Alma, Arkansas. It might be Alma, Arkansas, but Alma. But they headed there to watch a Little League baseball game, and it was just going to be the two of them and then some of their friends who they knew who actually lived in Alma, Arkansas. And again, Alma, Arkansas is also a very, very small town, and in fact it is so small that it is said that all of the residents that live there know one another. Up until this point, the day wasn't just only going normally, but it was going really, really well. Colleen and Morgan were having an absolutely fantastic time. Before going to the baseball game, Colleen took Morgan out for dinner, and then once they went to the baseball game, they watched it together, and Morgan actually at one point got down and pretended to start tying Colleen's shoelaces together. And Colleen recapped this and said that Morgan just thought it was absolutely hilarious, and because Morgan thought it was so funny, it had Colleen in stitches as well because her daughter just thought this was so funny, and in a 6-year-old's mind, that is absolutely hilarious. So she just said that her and her 6-year-old daughter were just having a really amazing time. At around 10:30 p.m., Morgan started to lose interest in the baseball game. And I know this is a normal occurrence for young children. I mean, it is hard for you to watch a baseball game. Even in my state, I can't really get into baseball. So especially a young child who has a short attention span, I can see it starting to get a little bit boring. So she'd asked Colleen if she could go play with her friends in a field that was about 75 yards away where they were playing catching fireflies. Colleen at first was very hesitant to allow Morgan to go and play in this field because she didn't know the area very well. It was late at night and Morgan was only 6 years old. But after being assured by some of her friends that this was safe and the kids did it all the time, she agreed, and that would be a decision that she would regret for her whole entire life. Colleen had told Morgan to stay where she could be seen, and Morgan was actually wearing a fluorescent green shirt and bright white sneakers, so she was very, very hard to miss. And once she ran off to play with her friends, Colleen glanced over often just to make sure everything was well, and she said she never noticed anything out of the ordinary. The kids had only been playing for about 15 minutes, around 10:45 when the game actually finished. And at this time, Colleen had noticed that the two friends that Morgan was playing with were now back with their parents, but Morgan was nowhere to be seen. So Colleen, being a normal parent, asked the two other children if they had seen Morgan, and they said that they had left her emptying her shoes in the parking lot by the car. Colleen, obviously being a little bit worried at this point, ran over to her car where she thought she would gather Morgan and head back to the game to talk to her friends and hang out for the rest of the night, but Morgan was nowhere to be found. She rushed back to the game and informed one of the coaches of what was going on, and the two of them started to question Morgan's friends. The kids said that while they had been dumping sand out of their shoes, they were approached by a man that they described as creepy. They said that before he had approached them, he was standing near a red Ford pickup truck with a white camper shell on the back, and he was kind of watching them, or at least that's what the kids had said. Once the game had ended, the two other children that Morgan were playing with ran back to their parents, but Morgan had actually stayed behind to talk to this creepy man. So obviously this raised a bunch of red flags, and the police were called immediately and an immediate search was conducted, but Morgan and the man were never found. Shortly after the search began, the police began to interview everybody that was still remaining at the game, and luckily some of the adults there had an eyewitness of what this man looked like and what he was doing as well. So they got a little bit of a better description of him from the adults rather than the kids who were just calling him creepy. The man was described as being a Caucasian male anywhere between the ages of 23 to 38, and he was described as having somewhat of a hillbilly accent. He was described as having a medium build and weighing about 180 pounds and standing at about 6 feet tall. He had salt and pepper colored hair that at the time was slicked back, and he had a mustache and a very thick beard. The truck he was driving was believed to have been a low-based red Ford pickup truck with faded paint. He had a white camper shell with curtains in the windows attached to the back of his truck, but the camper was actually too short for the bed of the truck and there was noticeable damage on the passenger's side. In the days following Morgan's abduction, it had come to light that on the exact same day that Morgan was abducted, in the same general area, a 4-year-old girl was almost lured into a truck by a man who was fitting Morgan's abductor's description. Luckily, in this situation, the man had failed to abduct this child because he was scared off when the child's mother came out to see what was going on. And again, the day after Morgan had vanished, a man fitting the same description of the man who is believed to have abducted Morgan Nick tried to lure a 9-year-old girl into a men's bathroom in a convenience store 15 miles from where Morgan was abducted. The first composite sketch was made and released to the public, bringing in over 4,000 tips, but unfortunately none of these led anywhere. Now this next part, when I read it, just absolutely shattered my heart. But because at the time when Morgan went missing, her siblings were so young and they couldn't comprehend what exactly had happened to their sister, and Logan would often ask his mummy to please bring home his sister and often asked her why she lost her. In 2001, Unsolved Mysteries actually covered Morgan's case, which brought it more to light. And in the same year after the Unsolved Mysteries episode came out, another composite sketch was done of what the suspect may look like in this case, and a progression photo was also released of what Morgan may look like now. And because of this new publicity, a lot more tips started coming in, most of them leading nowhere, but some of them were kind of a little bit sketchy and go hand in hand, so I'm going to mention those two as well as something else strange that happened with this case. On the morning of November 16th, 2010, a narcotics officer from Oklahoma actually informed investigators on Morgan's case about a mobile home that actually belonged to a convicted pedophile who is now in prison. Now, unfortunately, I was unable to figure out exactly what this man's name is, but I was able to find out that he was one of the main suspects originally in Morgan's disappearance, although this particular tip wasn't specifically linked to Morgan. Police conducted an extensive search of this man's property, but again turned up with absolutely nothing. On June 23, 2012, a woman by the name of Tanya Renee Smith, who is actually 24 years old and from Missouri, had actually tried to steal Morgan's identity. Now, this woman had actually already served time in prison. I'm not exactly sure what for, but she did serve time. What I do know, though, is that unfortunately a lot of missing people's identity is actually stolen. This is a very, very common occurrence, which is absolutely sickening. She had presented all of the vital documents that she would have needed to have stolen Morgan's identity, but likely because of how high profile this case was, on August 2nd, 2012, she was caught. She was charged and actually served time in jail for this crime, and after being released was on probation for 6 years. 5 years after this, on December 18th, 2017, the police received another tip, which again led them to the same property of the same convicted pedophile that I actually mentioned earlier. And this time the tip had suggested to them that Morgan might have been in the water well. But after conducting an extensive search of this whole entire property, including the water well, they turned up again with absolutely nothing. Morgan's mother, Colleen, to this day is still very, very active in her daughter's case. And she is very, very hopeful that her daughter will come home one day alive and well. And she really, really believes that she is out there somewhere. And that gives hope to all of these other people who have missing children and children who've just vanished. I think that is such a beautiful thing. But my heart sincerely goes out to Morgan Nick's family, because losing a child at such a young age and just not knowing where they are or what happened to them is just absolutely terrible. But guys, that brings us to the end of this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any more videos from me. Also, I would like to get your feedback on what you think about these combined videos where I do 2 cases in one, just because this might be something that I might do again in the future, just because I do get requests on cases that are a little bit shorter or that don't have enough information to make a video on. So I would really like to know what you guys think of these kinds of videos. But that is all. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!